Life and business can be easy, but us silly humans love getting in our own way. My name is Nico Rapclis, and I've had a wild journey. From releasing traumas that I held on to for decades, to playing college athletics, working with multi-million-dollar brands, having a spiritual awakening, and now coaching incredible humans navigate their inner and outer world. The Just Grow podcast is my outlet to share and help others with life and business. After investing north of $100,000 into my personal and professional development, the Woo plus Do formula is what has served me best. A healthy combination of mindset, energetics, consciousness, spirituality, self-healing, and discovery, matched with a high-level strategy, principles, focus, optimization, and accountability to help you be, do, and have everything that has been placed in your heart. This podcast is for the impact-driven entrepreneur that is finally ready to start thriving internally and externally. Welcome to Just Grow. Yo, what's happening, my friends? Welcome to the Just Grow podcast. I'm your host, Nico Rapclis. Glad to have you here for this particular episode. This is a long-awaited episode. This is with Andrea Crowder. She is incredible. I consider her one of my more profound mentors. I've learned so much from her. And as you'll hear on this episode, there's a cool origin story on how I found her. And I really asked myself a question before I invested into one of her programs. I said, would my future self thank me for this investment? And the question, or the answer that came through, was an obvious yes. And it completely transformed my energy and my life and my business and our events and everything we got going on. So I'm really excited to introduce you to her and have you listen to this amazing, profound episode with none other than the Andrea Crowder. She's incredible. She's an energetics coach. She's a life coach. She's a business coach. I think she does it all, and I don't know if she has an exact title around it. She just helps you become the best version of yourself, and that's all I can really say to that. So before we do jump in, I want to let you know, if for whatever reason you haven't heard about or you're not familiar with our Just Grow podcast live events, and you're still hearing this before the 11th at 4:30 p.m. Saturday, grab your tickets. Go to justgrowpodcast.com and come join us here in the Biltmore area in Arizona, where we're going to be hosting a live podcast interview with Akshay Nanavati. He is incredible. He's about to go set a world record. He's building out a Netflix documentary, going to be on the Joe Rogan Experience here soon. He is amazing. We're going to do an event with him. We're going to have breath work. We're going to have networking. We're going to have a lot of cool surprises, cash giveaways. So go to justgrowpodcast.com if you are hearing this before May 11th. And without further ado, let's jump to this interview with Andrea Crowder. Well, welcome, Andrea Crowder. Glad to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I know I just shared a little bit with you. We've had a couple of DM exchanges, but I want to just give some acknowledgement first and foremost, because you came into my life at a very interesting time. And it was interesting too, because I realized that we were already connected from a few years back when I had DM'd you after I went to a conference and essentially pitched you on a DM service of me manage your DMs and closing some clients for you, which was really interesting. But then I was really at kind of a standstill in my business, because I'm constantly investing in myself, and the majority is that of those investments in myself have come from coaches that are much more on the masculine side, structure, and got to have one message, one clear avatar, and it just didn't seem like it was aligning with me as much, and I couldn't quite explain it. And so I just kind of started looking for new mentorship that had different perspective, that was probably a little bit more on the spiritual side, because a lot of the stuff that I do is more on the spiritual, even on the feminine side. And so then I found a few people. You were one of them, and I really started diving into your content, and I really enjoyed it. And then I got the opportunity. I was considering investing into your program WAP, which is hilarious name.
We like to be fun.
Yeah. And so why that was really important to me is because I was kind of considering whether I wanted to dive in and just start an advertising campaign, which I've had lots of experience with, or invest into something new. And so I was really nervous for whatever reason. It was still a pretty big investment for me at the time. And then I just asked myself, I was like, would my higher self be proud of this investment? And I mean, I had to say yes at that point, and I did, and it changed everything. Like
Wow.
this whole new world of energetics. I feel like I didn't even understand energetics until I got into your world.
Wow.
And even like the next day, I got a client, and like it's really just changed the trajectory of where I'm going and my podcast and my events and my business and everything. So
Oh, I have
yeah,
chills. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that.
And yeah, so I've been diving much more into your content. I listen to your podcasts all the time and invested in some of your other programs, got inside of one of your master classes. And so yeah, I just wanted to give you some acknowledgement because like you definitely deserve it. I know you hear it a lot, but
Thank you.
you're doing some pretty amazing things. And it's like the way I think about energy is it breaks the rules
Mhm.
where you can't really quite understand it, but like once you start getting it, you're like, holy shit, this is everything.
It's everything. And the interesting thing is like I'm not a great rule follower, period, but I do feel like energetics actually does have some finite rules that I'm actually really interested in following and
Hmm.
understanding and because there's no ego in it. It's just science, right? Like it's just like this frequency matches this frequency. This one doesn't, period. And it's really made like when you take ego out of it, which then it takes meaning out of it, which would be like the human applied meaning out of things. Like it even changes relationships of like, well, this person's fallen out of my life, or this mentor's coming into my life, or this breakup happened, or like I can't be, in family members' lives anymore, or now I can. It's just like there's either a frequency match or there's not. And sometimes that can change a lot for human beings. And I just love the neutrality in science of energetics because it takes a lot of the human suffering if you're willing to look through that lens, of course. It can take a lot of the human suffering out of our relationships, decisions, what's happening, what's for it, what's been attracted to in our life, what we've lost in our life. And so I actually think there's a lot of rules in energetics that's probably the only area where I'm like, okay, daddy me. I'll do what you say. I can follow these because there's no ego in it.
That's interesting. We'll definitely get to that. So what I guess would be a great question that just popped in my head is for someone that's maybe hears this word energetics, energy, frequency, and maybe they've heard it a little bit and they're like, okay, it's starting to make sense. Like, how would you explain it to them?
I mean, it's looking for matches that create either polarity or resonance. I like resonance. And it just shows you with, like I said, without that lens of ego of like this works, this doesn't, this works, this doesn't. And when you look at it through that lens, it can get fun to just play instead of being like it's never going to happen for me because I'm not worthy, or it's just like, well, I just haven't been an energetic match for this yet, the same way that I wouldn't put a certain wattage light bulb into a lamp that wouldn't sustain it, or like the light bulb would blow, right? And so I'm just like, okay, well, those two things don't match. So let me find two things that do in order to get the applied result that I'm looking for, the experience that I'm looking for. So that's just how I look at energetics is like, well, here's the other thing is like, I look at it as there's this universal force available to us as a tool. We have lots of tools that we don't understand and that we don't know how to use, or we only know a little bit about. We have this tool called a body that can perceive a lot of information. Most people don't know how to use it the same way like a 90-year-old doesn't know how to use their iPhone. Like we're all thinking like, oh, old people, they haven't figured out how to use their iPhone. Ha ha ha, they can't text. I got a text from my grandma the other day and she's like, I don't know why my phone keeps sending me this X. And I was like, Grandma, that's because your phone's outdated and it can't translate an emoji. And she was blaming the iPhone, like the iPhone's sending it to her. And she didn't. She's like, I wish it would just stop. And I'm like, like it's not the iPhone isn't randomly sending you this X. She like didn't get it right. And we all have these bodies that are so sophisticated that most of us don't understand the tool that we've been given. And we like the body has us, we don't have it. That's how we perceive it. Like we're at the whim of like what's happening, of like either I'm either in health or illness, my emotions are positive or negative, and like most of us don't understand who, what, when, where, why. It's just like, oh, I've just had this thing, but I've never applied interest in learning the sophistication of this tool. And then we have the external energy and forces, which would be things like the quantum field, where we can leverage support that most of us don't realize that we have. I'll tell you a fun game that I've been playing with myself. I've been working really hard and playing in my feminine energy as a single woman. And um, I hear people all the time and they're like, well, you just have to like love yourself this way, the way that you want to be loved. And I'm like, what do I do? Like hug myself? I don't know. This doesn't, I'm a Virgo. This isn't really working for me. Like, give me more. There's still times where I'm just like, but what are the steps? Like, help. And so what I realized is like, okay, I have this universal energy that loves polarity, right? And I'm like, okay, so if I can be in my feminine energy, then I can attract the polarity of that, which would be masculine energy, but I don't need a man to like offer protection, provisions, etc. The universe can give that to me. So every time I swipe my card, I call the universe daddy and I'm like, thanks, daddy. Could you reload that? And the message that I swear to you, I heard the voice of God last night say, every time you receive my financial provision that I've given you with gratitude and joy in your heart, I'm going to double it. I'm going to put that money back on your card and double. And I just like got total chills. And I was like, God. I don't know, like maybe I'm crazy, but most of the time the Delulu make things come the true. So I've been playing with like, okay, if I could have this universal force and if I could pretend that I'm in a relationship with source, creator, God, universe, or whatever, like I'll have the provisions and the support because God has no ego, the universe has no ego, and the universe is completely devoted to matching my essence. And so I was like, if I can just hold my devotion to my feminine essence, the rest will be given. I went outside to take my dogs to the bathroom last night and I was like, oh my God, I forgot a poop bag. I'm in a new condo and I'm like, oh fuck, I have to like run upstairs. And then I look down and at my feet, there is a poop bag on the grass, brand new, that somebody just dropped there. And I was like, God. And
That's
then I was getting ready to go meet my sister. She just went through something tough yesterday. So I was like, you know what? I was like, okay, daddy, send Ubers to all the girls. We all need protection, provision, and penetration of the heart tonight. And so I sent an Uber to my sister and then called an Uber for myself. And I was like, okay, daddy, what Uber should I pick? But I want an Uber Black. And I hear pick comfort. And I was like, I'm going to get an Uber Black anyway, aren't I? So I pick comfort and I got an Uber Black anyway. And then we go to the restaurant. We're ordering like a beautiful meal. All of the girls are like, you order. I'm the Taurus rising in the group. And I'm like, all daddy, the order. I'll handle that part. And my friend was like, in her heart, she was like, fuck, I wanted the mashed potatoes, but I got the scallops mashed potatoes. So we're not all playing this game because all of my friends are like, well, I want a God boyfriend. So we're all like living in our like little illusion of a land. And she goes, Daddy, will you get me the mashed potatoes in her head? I didn't
okay.
know this.
Okay.
And then they deliver the food and they come out and they set mashed potatoes on the table. And I was like, we didn't order those. And she starts cracking up and she's like, I told Daddy to send mashed potatoes. Like that's an example of like we have this energy in the world, almost like this flawless conveyor belt that when we are in a completely surrendered state, that it's like there's just no resistance in getting what we want immediately, like mashed potatoes in a poop bag at my feet the instant that I needed it. I'm like, was that really there before? I don't know. All I know is when I needed it, I looked down and it was literally at my fucking feet. The devotion of God was at my feet last night. Like that is the availability of the tools that we have in this universe.
I mean, there's several things I can comment on that. one, I was kind of cracking up because you're talking about your grandma and Instagram and
Hmm.
the phones. We call my grandma Insta Granny, and she's just like she has a she's so funny. She has like an account on her iPad and then an account on her iPhone, so it's like confusing, but it's so funny when they get involved. But one of the last things that you said, and I heard this from somebody a while back, and just talking about like even when you're driving and you see someone like homeless, you
Hmm.
could just in your mind just say, "Hey, I'm sending this person good energy."
Hmm.
I think whenever you're putting that good energy and you're putting, like you said, that devotion out, like it
Hmm.
is this invisible force that you're just putting out there, and whatever is sent out is it comes back.
Yeah, and I like the word discernment with devotion too, where it's just like, okay, so if I'm going to practice being in my feminine, then the divine masculine would lead, which would be let the divine masculine offer me the intuition that says, give this person money or give this person blessings. Like almost every single month, the divine masculine leads me to have like a bunch of tens in my wallet. And I can always like, I give those to whoever I receive like the leadership or the guidance or the discernment to gift someone like lunch or something like that. I call them my friends like downtown where I'm like, which one of my friends needs a meal today? But it's deep, deep discernment of I it I'm like a recovering saveaholic.
Hmm.
I
What
spent
do you
my
mean
whole
that?
life trying to I've spent my whole life trying to save people. My mom,
Hmm.
starting with my mom, and then my ex-husband with PTSD, and then my daughter who had extreme depression, and who it was my responsibility for her, but for the adults in my life, it never was. So I've been working on like disassembling um, this like urge to want to like go fix things for people, because that's actually coming from a state of control of my own discomfort. So I don't like that behavior for myself because it's fear-based versus love or discernment based.
Right.
But yeah, like I have a deep, deep devotion to the discernment of my intuition, to the discernment of the leadership that I'm receiving from source creator, God, the universe, my soul, like wherever my intuition comes from.
I love that word, and I forget where I heard it on your content, but you were kind of taking. I love the whole concept of like being very intentional with your words. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but have you ever heard of abracadabra and what that means in Hebrew?
Mm-mm.
So I actually got it tattooed. It's the only tattoo I've ever gotten. And in Hebrew, it means as I speak, I create.
Mm.
And so like that, it just dawned on me, and this was years ago. And then just to hear you talk about how powerful words are as well, it's just confirming. But it just makes me realize how powerful words are. And
Mhm.
another perspective on how to look at that is that sometimes it can be challenging to control our thoughts, but it's a
Yeah.
lot easier to control our words. And so if we're more intentional with our words, then we have more, our thoughts won't like run rampant, if you will.
And thoughts will not be controlled. So, because the more that we try to control, the more inner mind is like, oh, there's a threat. Let me send more of that. And so we just get more of the thought that we've been trying to resist. So my dad used to tell me really annoying things when I was younger, like make peace with the conditions you're in, and then look how
Mm.
you can improve upon it. And I like rolled my eyes my whole childhood, and now I'm like, fuck, my dad's a genius. Damn it. He's been on my podcast many times now. So if you guys are like wondering where my brain came from, it's almost a direct replica. But I liked that because um in rapid resolution therapy through my training, one of the tools that I learned was it should be whatever it is, and then I was like, oh my God, that's the same as make peace with the conditions that you're in. It should be if it is or was, and um, it shouldn't be if it wasn't. Whatever the actual conditions are, make peace with those, make resonance with those. And as we do that, the thoughts that we would be trying to control actually melt and go away because the inner mind is like, that's not useful anymore. We can pivot, we can change our attention.
Mm.
But yeah, control doesn't work there.
It's letting go of
Frustrate people.
resistance.
It's it's you remember that game like the Chinese finger pull when we were kids, you put your finger in it and like the harder that you pull the other way, the tighter it gets.
Yeah.
it's the same as that. So move in, get closer instead of trying to run from it or bat it away or be like, no, just be like, okay, let me get closer. Sometimes the thought just wants attention and be like, interesting. Okay.
Do you have any examples that you've experienced recently with that for you?
Um, I mean, I think about, other people's behavior and how sometimes we can feel what we would describe as a trigger based off of what's going on with other people, whether it's a client and um maybe they were gonna sign up and they didn't, and then the thought that may create suffering. Um, Let me actually use a different example. So I like this one for myself. Like, if a trigger pops up for me, I like to name it. I ask the age of it. Well, that's not true. I name it. I ask if it's mine first. This
Mm.
is a big one. So yesterday, a client was saying like, I feel really anxious. I want to book this trip. I want to go on this European trip before I have another baby. And I'm feeling so anxious about it. And I'm just like, there's no logical reason why there should be anxiety applied here. And I was like, Just ask if the sensation is yours." And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Whose is it?" She goes, "My dad's." And I said, "What do we need to know?" And it was ultimately like an old thought that was like dad's fear around something, right? And so, and I was like, ask if there's anything for you to do now. And she's like, no. So the thought just needed to be witnessed.
Mm.
Don't we all sometimes just need to be witnessed?
Yes. I've even said it's like, I don't know if it's something you shared, but I think this kind of correlates is those thoughts and emotions, they have a lifespan on them. So if you just witness them and you see them and let them take their natural course, they'll just dissipate. They'll dissolve essentially.
Mhm,
But if not, it's like like a zit on your neck, and it's like one of those ones if you're trying to pop it and it
mhm,
won't pop, but you just like keep going and going, it just
mm,
makes it 10 times worse. And I
mhm.
feel like that's the case when you resist, it's like you're wrestling with it, you're trying to pop that zit and it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah. I've always seen it as like a game of whack-a-mole, that old game at like a circus where you hit the thing and it's just like you apply all this effort and it's like, go away. And then it pops up somewhere else. And like we use these like coping strategies that oftentimes don't clear the zit or don't make the little monster go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. It's like, but as we move in, as we get closer, as we ask the sensation for the information that it's offering us, like our inner mind will show us. But most of the time, we don't get present. We get mad. We feel like I'm never gonna, like, because nobody studied the sophistication of the tool called the body to understand what to do with it when we're having these moments.
Hmm. You know, one other thing that's been really powerful for me that I've learned from you is like I'm constantly asking myself, constantly asking friends, clients. My favorite question is, what do you want?
Mm,
But what I heard from you that opened up my perspective was, how do you want it to feel?
hmm
And I think when we're more intentional about like the feeling and how we want to experience it, that makes all the difference.
hmm Even in relationships, when, I'm talking to a really good friend who's struggled leaving a relationship that hasn't really been healthy for her. And she's like, I love him. And like, if only this. And I'm like, okay, is it really him?
Hmm.
Or is it how you've felt when you're with him? What is it that you're really seeking? Is it him or is it the emotional state that you felt sometimes with him? And if so, what are those? And if so, how can we still have them now? That way you're not feeling like um you're suffering because you've gone from having something and then didn't, and now you feel this like sensation of loss. So
You-
I felt that many times. I love being alone. I'm so good at like being by myself. And sometimes when I've left past relationships, I'm like, why do I feel terrified of being alone? And I'm like, this is not who the fuck I am. Let me go handle these. Let me go handle this.
So
Yeah.
what's your process for like in those cases when you're I can't think I remember hearing you say I just felt like a weak ass bitch when you woke up one day. Like
Yes.
what's your process for like when you are in those denser, heavier emotions and you're not feeling at your best? Do you have like a systematic process that you go through to get you back on top of your game?
I'm either going to use some form of resolution therapy. So I'll use my own training for myself, or I'll book a session with someone else, most of the time, Dr. Connolly. And, or I will do what I told you before, which is like get present with those emotions. There's some other steps that I feel reluctant to share only because sometimes they can bring up traumas that other people aren't qualified to handle for themselves. So I always feel like I would say like there's opportunities for us to figure out like the the trauma that it's connected to, but I don't want to tell people how to do that if they would be at the whim of a really bad trauma by themselves. So I would say go book a session with somebody in rapid resolution therapy. There's so much stuff that can be handled in a single session. Almost the only time that I've ever brought a trigger to the table that required more than one session was when I was leaving my 20-year marriage, and that was really, really heavy on my unconscious mind. And then I'm old school and like I loved all the Tony Robbins stuff. Like I went to UPW a few times. I took my
Yeah.
son. I'm going to take my team in November. I'm still a big Tony fan, and I believe I mentioned on that episode that um one of the things that I did was I asked myself, okay, what do I need? And what I asked when I asked that question, that was like, I need like this authoritative, safe, masculine energy. And I was like, okay, where can I get that? And I was like, okay, Tony has always been that person to like hold that posture. And so he can be a mentor from afar for me. And so I just put on a Tony video, and he was talking about like thinking bigger than your problem. And he's like, your problem seems really big today until you have a bigger problem. So he said, um, if um, if all of a sudden you are a paraplegic, which is most people's like greatest fear in terms of injury, whatever it is that you're dealing with right now seems small and insignificant. And as soon as I imagine myself being a paraplegic, I'm like, oh, I'm doing great today. But even still, could I find evidence to where I could not just survive, but actually thrive even as a paraplegic? Yeah, there's like inspirational speakers all over the world who have gone through that experience and are living remarkable lives anyway. And I was like, okay, if they can be, because I've witnessed them literally on Tony's stages. And I'm like, okay, I remember this exact moment of listening to this speaker at a Tony's event years ago. And I was just like, he found a way to make the greatest fucking lemonade out of the bullshit lemons that he had been dealt. Whatever I'm going through today isn't that big. So, but the piece that Tony likes to emphasize is physicality. And so, what I do first is move my fucking body.
Mm.
So I was going through a season for a little bit, and I started waking up every single day, and I would go on these like power walks, and I would just like stomp shit out, and I would put shit in my ear and just use physicality. And then I would go to Tony's videos where he would like, have you ever been to a Tony event?
Not his traditional ones, but I've been to one of them.
Okay, so if anybody's ever been to a UPW, as soon as I say the words make a move, your whole system just like alerted and you're like, fuck, I can do anything. And like, because he conditions the fuck out of your body. Like if you see like the hairs on my arm right now, they're standing straight up because my whole body is still conditioned. When I hear the words make a move, or I say them myself, I hear Tony's voice and I'm right back into the original state that he put me in years ago in Chicago.
Mhm.
So I can listen to that 3-minute video, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm a fucking firewalker. My ass has walked on burning coals. This ain't shit. So I just have to become like a Tony for myself, you know?
Mm. I think I've heard that before from even some other people of like imitation is really powerful. Like just
Mm,
imagine you are that person that like if you're not in your best spot and imagine that you are a person that you like just what you said, like a Tony.
yeah. It
And
depends on the level of emotion that you're in. Because
mm,
sometimes I can use like a future self to like anchor me there. But if I'm in this like state, like, holy fuck, it feels like my life is falling apart, it's too big of a jump. And so I just need to get myself to a place of neutrality, and then I could use some sort of like character energy, future self energy, visualization or whatever, and then I can start to anchor my way up there as well. But my first goal is always like, where can I find neutrality? What do I need? And then I look for what was the what was the root cause of this? Because I don't want this. Most people re-experience their triggers over and over and over their entire lives, and they're like, well, this is just how it has to be. I say, then you go find a rapid resolution therapy specialist and you handle that shit in a single session most of the time, and then it's not a trigger for you anymore. So
Yeah,
become untriggerable.
I
That's
can
I'm
attest to
just
that.
building myself into a superhuman.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I've started jumping into Dr. Connolly's work myself after hearing it from you,
Amazing.
and we actually
Hmm.
had him on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and I was dealing
Yay.
with something, and I was just amazed at how it was cleared in 20 minutes.
Yep, he's remarkable.
This is magic.
When I first like witnessed him, at first I had signed up for the RT and I had only read his book, Life-Changing Conversations, which everyone should get because like you'll heal triggers just reading the book. It's remarkable. I was like, why do I feel better just reading this other person's story? My inner mind applied the process to myself as I was reading, and I was like, okay, there's something here. This is
Wow.
sorcery. What is
Yeah.
happening? And I signed up for his training and I was like, this man is a slow talker. Oh shit. I don't know if I can get through this whole like 40-hour training or 60-hour training that I was in with him. And as I listened to what he said, I was like, I've never heard something that has felt so true to me in my entire life. I don't know who this man is. Never had like seen him in my life before until this one day. And I was like, I'm going to make this man my friend. I'm going to put him in my pocket and I'm going to take him everywhere I go. And then I found out he lives an hour north of me. And now we have dinner together and he's my best friend and he's in my pocket. And I text him all the
Oh, man.
time.
That's
Like,
amazing.
he's remarkable. Everyone has to know Dr. Connolly.
He's something. He's a character too.
He is a character.
I wanted to get into this because you mentioned it, and I know it's something that's really alive for you right now. But you're talking about like when you would go on these walks and then you're recording these voice memos. And it's interesting because I've been doing this for a while myself because I've been in some masterminds that I essentially created with just some friends, and what we would do is just we would check in daily with our with just voice memos,
Mhm,
and it's essentially kind of similar to what this new offer that I'd love for you to explain to the audience.
mhm,
But even on top of that, I think there's so much power in just like voicing things that are in our head that we can get it
mhm,
out. But it's
mhm,
so powerful to just like it's like an active journal, if you will.
mhm,
And on top of that, uh, I really resonated with this new offer that you've just created, Legends in the Making, because you're walking around these neighborhoods that really inspire you.
mhm,
And I learned that from a mentor a while back. He calls it dream building. And so
mhm,
I live here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and there's a lot of beautiful places up in like Paradise Valley and North Scottsdale. And pretty much like nowadays, it used to be like once a month, but like it's usually like once a week, once every 2 weeks. I just go drive through these neighborhoods and I just get in the energy of what I want to eventually experience. I'm like test driving the life that I
yeah,
want to live.
yeah. Yeah, so it was really inspired by something similar to that, and that a couple of years ago, I was um, eating alone for my anniversary, realizing like I didn't know at that point that my relationship was over, but at I was at a really low point in it. And I had been a caretaker for someone with extreme PTSD from his military career for a while now. And it was really beginning to take a toll on me, even like with my physical health. And he just like wasn't even able to leave the house. So like he didn't show up for our anniversary. And I went for a drive and I just passed by this tiny little park. And I was like, this is the most charming, sweet little park. Let me just like sit on the grass and ground for a little bit. And um, there were like these cute ducks waddling in the park. There's the water, and there was these big homes across the street that are called the Isles here in Fort Lauderdale, which is like the coastal waterway homes, beautiful homes, like multiple millions. I'm looking at this home probably for $4 million or so. And I was like, this looks like such a happy house.
Mhm.
I want a happy house. I'm gonna have a happy house someday. And if people can't be happy in my house, they can get the fuck out. Like I fucking made a declaration to myself in that moment. Like you are gonna create the peace that you have been craving since you were a baby. And um I it took a really long time and a lot of different decisions that had happened, but I had promised myself like the end goal was always get on the aisles, have your own happy house. One of my friends even was like, what if it was faster to get on the aisles and into the happy house um than you thought? And she's like, what if the person that lives there is like a single guy? So my assistant who's like got Scorpio somewhere in her chart is just like, he's a retired major league baseball player, left-handed, two kids and a wife. And I was like, well, that doesn't work. But she found the information in like 5 minutes. But I was like, no, I'm gonna have my house here. And then when I had to move out of my last house because it was raining on the inside,
Oh.
like there was a leak somewhere in the roof that the landlord could not seem to find or fix. And so I was like, it's time to move. I can't keep dealing with this every time it rains in Florida.
Mm.
And I started looking around, and the place that I'm in right now, I walked through it. It was more money than I wanted to pay, but it has like a little a dock where you can like put your paddle board in the water. Like I have like a boat slip. I don't have a boat, but like I have paddle boards. And at first I was just like, oh, I don't really want to pay that. It's more than I've been paying, like a couple grand more than the last place that I was paying. And swear to you, I heard the voice of God say, you have been asking for this. We have delivered. Do not walk away from this prepared blessing. And I was like,
Mm.
oh my God, my happy house is here. Like I thought it was going to be years down the road, and maybe like I would be with someone before I could be in a home like this on my own. And um, yeah, I messaged my real estate agent the next day and I was just like, this is it. I have to do it. And what I started doing after I started applying was I started walking the path from my old house to this one, which is like 1.3 miles. And I would do that round trip every day during my time where I was like starting to feel a little like overwhelmed and frustrated with like some other stuff that was going on in my life. So this was like, I was already doing my walks. Let me do my walks this way. And um, I remember thinking like I'm looking at all these houses every morning and I'm like, one of the things that I've always done was get into the rooms with people who can think bigger than me
Mm.
in order for me to be able to think like them, because it's never about having different resources. It's not, we never need more money. We never need, like, we literally always have the most amount of resources that we need to do the thing that is the calling of our heart right now. I've experienced that for myself, all of my clients consistently every time. We always have the resources. Sometimes it's money under the couch, metaphorically, or literally sometimes, depending on the person. But um I was but I was always thinking like there's always something that has to shift in the way that I'm perceiving information in order for me to be able to even find my resources that I always have access to. And I was like, people message me all the time and they're like, I wish I could live in your brain. I like just want to hear what you think every single day. I wish I could just like hang out with you. I wish I could go on walks with you and all of this stuff. And I'm like, what if people could? What if I could literally be on my walks every single day doing the thing that I love to do, going on like, my vision walks and like getting myself into state for the day, like thinking about my business. I'm usually messaging my team. We're kind of in creative mode of like, what are we doing today? What are we doing this month? What's coming? Like, where do we need to like get into the frequency of a solution for something? Where do we need to create a new idea or whatever? And I'm like, what if I could just tell people exactly what's happening? Like a client message a couple days ago, and she was dealing with like a sales issue. And I was like, okay, here's how I coached her through it. And these people pay me almost $7,000 a month. That's not accessible for most people. And I was like, what if I could give my brain in like a scalable way to a lot of people at like an almost nothing rate every single month? It's $59 right now at pre-sale and it'll go up to 99. I think it'll probably always stay 99, but people get grandfathered into the $59 if if they sign up at that for always. And I'll just message people the same way that I would a client and be like, here's what I would do, or here's what I'm thinking, here's how I'm thinking about this, here's what I'm planning in my business. I tell people live, like, this is what I'm getting ready to launch. I wasn't even planning a launch. I changed a launch. I changed this strategy mid launch. This is why I did it. This is why I'm thinking. Here's how I changed my energy. Here's how I here's how I get into like future self energy. Just like whatever I'm doing for myself, I'm like, let me just tell people exactly what I'm doing that's useful for me in a scalable way where anybody could have access to what most people would pay like almost $70,000 a year to be able to access. And I was thinking maybe like we would have like 100 people come in at the beginning of the launch, and we had like over 200. We doubled our sales goal there. And I was just like, oh, you guys really like this. Okay. This wasn't just a fun thing for me. You guys have been like kind of asking for it, and clearly we were all on the same frequency. But we have hundreds of people now in there, and we anticipate that we'll like break 1,000 by the end of the year. And eventually this will be $1 million product on its own. Like I'm going big with luncheons. Like y'all like stay with me because I'm going to tell you exactly what I do, why I'm thinking about it, why I do it this way so you can understand the thought process behind it. Duplicate it, do whatever you want with it, take my ideas, make them yours as long as it feels like an energetic match for you. But like I'm going big with legends. I didn't know when I started. I was like, this will be
Yeah,
fun.
that's beautiful. I'm glad to hear like even the expanded story of that
Yeah.
because anytime I like hear those, like the thing I resonate a lot with that is like the things that really grow and really in turn eventually become expansive, they just kind of feel effortless.
Mm,
And that's even so a few things to respond to on that, and even especially like talking about like walking in the aisles. So one of the visions that we have with this podcast, so we do, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but we do podcast events where we do it in front of a live audience. That's how we started it. And it was just
cool.
like an idea I had on top of a mountain. And I was like, this seems cool. I had no idea if it would work. I'd never thrown an event before, but we did it a week later. We had 70 people at it. And then people
Wow.
were asking, like, when's the next one?
Damn.
Um, and then like the third event we had over 200 people at, and I'm
Wow.
like blown away, but it's just it felt effortless. And that's kind of what I relate to
Yep.
that. And then on top of that is a friend challenged me to like what's my big vision with the podcast. And I told him that I want to do a stadium event. And then we started kind of like workshopping it. And like
Oh,
so
I
the
got
vision
chills.
is I don't know the timeline. I think God knows, but
Yeah.
I really believe that it's gonna be at Chase Field in downtown Phoenix. And so it's been, I mean, it's right down the street from me, but the last couple weeks, I found myself, and it was even yesterday, I was driving just kind of random. I was kind of just taking a drive and I looked over and I just see it right there. Like, damn, like it's just
Yeah.
glistening. And I think now even just hearing your story again, as I want to make it a regular routine to like go down there and just
Do
find
it.
out a little bit more and just like, start going to more baseball games and just like really,
Drive, get out of the parking lot, like have something with you where it's just like if I were have your mic, be like, I brought my own mic. I'm here.
yeah.
BYOM. Yes.
One question I did have for you, in terms of you're talking about you want to get in the rooms where like I don't know if you directly said it, but like where
Hmm.
everyone's smarter than you.
Hmm.
How do you determine who you want to like? There's so many mentors out there. There's so
Hmm.
many people we can learn from. Everyone like there's a vast amount of knowledge and wisdom and energy. Like
Hmm.
who do you decide to invest your time and energy and resources into? And like how do you go about learning from them? Is it just one person you go dive deep with them, or is it like you're learning from a handful of people in different departments?
It depends. I'm a Manny Gen, so oftentimes like I do a little bit of multiple things at once, and that always feels really good and aligned for me. But it always starts with a values match first. Like, I don't have to share all my same values with everyone, but we have to have some core values matched. And so I look to see who shares values with me. I look to see if I have resonance with them of like, am I being in relationship with them out of love or fear? Fear being like, fear of missing out. Like if I don't do it, then like I'm going to miss out on something. And a lot of people are making financial investment decisions on mentors for that reason of like, I'll get left behind or I'll never make it to this financial dollar amount or whatever versus like, whoa, that person thinks in a way, that person applies, that person runs their business this way, that person shows up, energetically and spiritually this way. So I recently hired Orrin Harris after interviewing him on my podcast. I knew for a long time I was going to hire him. I just had this, I saw
He's
one
incredible, by
video.
the way.
He's insane. Yeah, he's insane. And I told a friend last August, I was like, I like this guy. I think I need to bring him on my podcast. She goes, oh, I know him. And she put us in a group text in that exact moment. She's like, Warren, you have to meet my friend Andrea. And he told me after the podcast interview a couple weeks ago, he's like, I knew the day she put us in that text message that we were going to work together. And I was like, I did too.
Mm.
So, but it was after the podcast interview that he actually initiated and said to me, he's like, Andrea, I think we're supposed to work together. And I was like, I agree. I think it's time. So, we start working together in a week. We start next week. But one of the things that we both agreed, and he said, um, the next piece that I feel like is important is like a shared vision of like, this is where I'm trying to go, and this is what I believe that I can get there. And like, can you hold this vision for me in the way that I want to get there? And so he goes, Andrea, let me ask you a question. What do you think like it is that you would be looking for in this relationship? And I was like, if I'm completely honest, I think my next level of business is going to be found through my mastery and my level of intimacy in relationships, like healing a lot of like my traumas from past romantic relationships. And he goes, perfect, because that's exactly what I was thinking too. He's a
Mm.
reflector in his human design, if you follow human design.
Mm.
And I was like, excellent. So, yeah, we're working on like my ultimate state of like feminine energy, my devotion to God and all of this stuff. I haven't even told him about my like Delulu romance, like in a relationship with the divine. Yeah, he's just gonna be like, yep, you're my client. Perfect, Matt.
Well,
So,
I
but
was
yeah.
saying on that thread is I know you shared a little bit about your vision with legends. I would
Mhm.
be curious and if there's anything you're willing to share and on anything else within your vision.
Hmm. My podcast is a big one for me. I would love to see my podcast at some point have like millions of downloads. And there's like whether we like I'll always monetize because monetizing is in the highest good of all because I want to take people on a journey with me. But honestly, I could give zero fucks. Like there's not an ounce of energy in my body that gives a fuck about that podcast ever making a dollar. It feels like the greatest calling, the greatest love, the greatest amount of devotion of my heart when it comes to my business in terms of like content creation. I know, and it has been reflected to me by so many like psychics, healers, and then even my own audience that like my voice has a special like God-given texture that like melts people's like pressures. And I use the word pressure a lot, but it it relaxes and soothes people's nervous system. And that was something that I didn't have to earn. It was God given. I woke up with it as soon as I ended up getting portaled onto earth. And so, like, me having a microphone in my hand on the regular basis feels like the greatest purpose of my heart. So my podcast is a big one for me. And then of course seeing my programs grow. Um I hear I have new business ventures coming from like intuitives in my life. And a psychic told me, she's been telling me for years, like, she's like, you're gonna be a billionaire someday. And I was just like, ah. Like, honestly, I was like, that feels like pressure. Hell no.
Really?
And she told me, she's like, you are laying in 2024, you are laying the foundation for billionaire status. And I was like, through what? Like, I
Mm.
don't know. I don't know. But then yesterday I got like three different text messages or DMs from different people, and people with each one were like, I was thinking about like, you're the female Joe Dispenza. And I was just like, people have said that to me before. But all of a sudden, yesterday, after she's been like, the psychic is saying things, and then people are like anchoring me into Joe Dispenza energy, I feel that all of a sudden there's going to be a platform increase somehow. Like I said, God is my boyfriend, so he does the heavy lifting. I don't know how that's gonna happen. But yeah, like for me, it's just like where can I use my voice in a way that will like people are walking around with shattered nervous systems and in just like such deep states of stress. And if I could if I could do anything to like warm that glass so that it can like heal those cracks, like I'm here for it. I'll show up for it.
Oh man, I love all of that, and I would agree. After continuing to dive through your content, not that it's like the most important thing, but I am with how much your work has impacted me and the amount of people that I've shared it with. I'm surprised that your platforms aren't bigger. That's just kind of my perspective.
I just like my programs sell themselves and like my numbers never make sense to like bros. They look at like my social media numbers and like my engagement, comments and all of that stuff and they're like I had these guys try to have me come in and be the face of this really large female empowerment account a couple of years ago,
Hmm.
like millions of followers. And they're like, they had purchased the account from the person who had created it and they were looking for a face of it. And my friend Travis, who is the founder of a tech company, was like, you have to meet my friend Andrea. And so they reach out to me and they're interviewing me. And they're like, honestly, we're looking at your social media engagement numbers. And they're like, it's not that impressive. And I was like,
Hmm.
those aren't the numbers you should be looking at.
Yeah.
It's the numbers on the back end that you're going to be like, that doesn't track.
Yeah.
Like my business doesn't track for like what you see on the front end versus what happens financially on the back end with millions of dollars coming in with like these small numbers. Like it doesn't make sense. Like you could only credit to like a universal force that just handles it for me.
Yeah, I agree. And
But
it's interesting because I was definitely in that mind frame. Well, and I'll come back to what I said earlier is energy breaks the rules,
oh wait. Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. The
right?
the earthly rules, yeah.
Yeah. But like I would say this was probably the thing that the post that really drew me in because I started looking at your stuff and like scrolled through some stuff and then I saw your post about it was like your 184K month. And then I'm looking at it like she has like 30 some thousand followers and then she's talking about this and then like majority of your revenue came from online courses and that just
Mhm,
blew my mind because all
mhm.
my mentors are like get on sales calls, do that whole
Nope.
gambit. And I was just like that sounds amazing to just sell
I have
courses.
like 4 clients a month. I wasn't doing masterminds. I have one small mastermind right now that's only 6 weeks long. I did one last year. I'll maybe do one this year. I don't know for sure, but like the I still have $1 million brand with exclusively with digital courses because I promised myself I was like I would really create true freedom. And you asked for my vision, and ultimately, if I could say my vision very succinctly, it would be that the impact of my business has longer legs than I do, which
Mm.
just means that like Zig Ziglar, homie's dead, and he's still selling DVDs and CDs. So that's the vision for my brand is like I want things accessible for generations to come. I want like my great 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 grandkids to be like, damn, grandma was an OG. She knew some universal shit. But I want this wisdom to be able to support my own family for generations, but change the legacies of other families as well.
And how cool is that? Like this conversation that we're having is gonna last
Live
for as long as
forever.
technology lasts and
I have chills,
our
yeah.
grandkids and our great grandkids and people we have no idea who we're going to impact are going to hear this and it is going to
Yeah.
transform and change their world.
Yep.
Oh, damn. I could talk to you forever. I'm sure you hear that a lot.
This is
So
so
I
fun.
do have a really cool gift that I want to share with you, and then probably just some last questions on like where people can find you and make sure that they get plugged in with your world.
Okay.
So to give a little context to this gift,
Okay.
okay, your future self, she came to us and she wanted to tell you a few things. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. This is so fun. Hey, Andrea, it's me. It's you, the future you. I'm so excited for you to get here, but I'm equally, if not more, pumped for you to embrace every moment until you do get here. It's cool to see how passionate, resilient, and courageous you are. I'm excited for you to see who you've become and all you've created. Yeah, the optimal health and vitality that had you to feeling younger and hotter every single day. The wealth you built that only came from pleasure. the loving and committed relationships with friends, team members, family, and clients that filled your heart with so much joy. Oh, and trust me, that perfect intimate relationship came in more beautifully than you imagined. You'll understand what I'm talking about soon. Andrea, I love you. I love who you are. I love who you've always been. And I love who you're constantly becoming. Now get up and make it a great day. Oh my God, that's the coolest thing. AI is so nuts. What? That is genius. Oh my God. That was genius. I'm like trying not to cry. That was like so good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Wow.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for just being here and just being who you are and just shining your lights. Because I'm not kidding. Like, and I don't like. I learn from a lot of people, and I'm well connected, and I learn lots, and I I'm a lot more discerning on who I pay attention to these days and who I listen to these days. But when I find someone that I really resonate with, I go all in, and like you've just made a huge impact on my life and all the people that I'm impacting. And we have a huge vision for, yes, the podcast, but also that's our company too. We build those out for people, and there's a whole process, and it's impacting people like I've never seen before. And like your whole principles and everything about you has just infused this whole new energy into everything that we're doing. So just from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I can't. You're gonna have to send me more after the podcast on like the company details. I'm like, this feels like something we need to attach to Future Self Energy, so we should talk about that. To Future
Cool.
Self Fortune is the program.
Yeah, we'd be happy to chat with you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
any last words, anything you want to share? Where can people find you? What do you want
Um,
people? Also, I love this question. I heard this on a podcast. Like, what's your ask? Or maybe even phrase that like, what do you want people to take away from this conversation that we just had?
take away that there's so much opportunity for us to learn these sophisticated tools that we've been given, the body and the field, like those two pieces. And like there's so much depth and opportunity for you there to my standard for life is remarkable. Like remarkable. And like part of that is me learning how to use this tool that I've been given. So like that would be like my greatest hope for people. um, Find me on Instagram, but also on my podcast. Like my ask would be come subscribe to the podcast and hang out with me for, well, however long as your intuition says, maybe for always. Let's be on this journey together. And if you want to be in my world, like legends again, like my whole heart is in this like program and like bringing people with me into this amazing legendary life. So yeah,
Amazing.
Instagram love underscore Andrea Crowder.
Yeah, we'll obviously put all the information in the show notes. And well, probably the last thing I'll say too, because I definitely want to make mention of this, because a lot of times we dive into the people's previous story. We didn't
Mhm.
necessarily get into that because we just had so much juiciness to talk
Mhm.
about. But I would recommend anybody listening is go back to the first episode of your podcast that shares your story, because
Mhm.
wow, like I've
Mhm.
heard a lot of crazy stories, but yours is one of the most remarkable. And
Drug dealers, stripper, cocaine, baby daddies, the works, just to give you a like glimpse.
but I heard that
Yeah.
a while back is they talked about the people with the most light experience the most dark. And
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
you've been through a lot, and you probably wouldn't want anyone else to experience that, but it's also made you who you are. And that's why you're becoming whether you want to call it or not, like the female Joe Dispenza or whatever you want to call it, just the Andrea Crowder that we get to see and witness here today.
See, Andrea, thank you.
Cool. Well, thanks again for being on. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure.